Hi everybody, welcome to Missy's Imaginings. Welcome to part 2 of sewing a 1982 gown set for the SD size, this is Hugh Wrong, Angel Studios 3rd scale BJD. And this pattern was originally for a 16-inch doll. So in part 1 of this video series, we went over how I'm going to take this pattern and enlarge it to this size, as well as make a few adjustments to fit this particular doll. So I go over all the pattern pieces and fabric choices, and then how we put together this little combination undergarment. So that was all in part 1, the first video of the series. And now in the second, we're going to go ahead and work on the petticoat. As life so happens, I got this all done and I was ready to start this video, and I got sick. So I was like, okay, so most of the time that I was going to be filming and sewing, I was actually sleeping and bundled up in blankets. And yeah, so it's been interesting. So this video might be put together from a few different clips of different time frames, depending on how I'm feeling and how much I can get done. So my goal was going to be the petticoat and the gown, but given what I want to do with the petticoat here, we might only get through the petticoat in this video, and then we'll have at least 2 more videos for the gown and then the lacy over pieces. So just so you're prepared. Sometimes life is beyond our control, so we take into hand what we can control and we run with it, right? So for the petticoat, oh sorry, my voice is kind of gross. I wanted to explore a couple different options. So in the first video, I did kind of mull over the interesting thing in that the petticoat pieces were long, slender pieces or strips, and so they originally are a series of strips. So we have this one, and then they're all sewn together to form the skirt. And the side back is like the widest one. And then all those pieces are sewn to a yoke at the waist. When I was making the pattern, I did lay out all those pieces, accounting for the seam allowance overlap, and I made a pattern piece that was one piece, so it's cut on the fold so that it's just one piece of fabric. And then this is the shorter version that is supposed to have the ruffle attached, and so this is our choice for the ruffle. It's just an eyelet fabric that was rescued from something. I don't even know where it originated. But I wanted to see what the difference is, and thank you for all the comments. I hadn't even been thinking about, in an old-fashioned pattern, when they were originally drafted, that the bolts of fabric were a lot more narrow, and so that could account for some of the narrow pieces. But I kind of lean toward the idea that when we cut in strips like this, the grain goes down the center of each piece. So for instance, this is the back piece, and then we have, let's see, this one feels like it's a fold, so that would be the front piece. Then we have a side front like so, and on each of these pieces the grain is going to go from the waist straight down, from the waist straight down. So as the pattern wraps around the doll, the grain is continuing to fall from the waist to the floor. Contrasted with when you cut something in a semicircle like this one, The only part of this skirt that is not on the bias will be the very center front that's cut on the fold of the fabric. So the rest of all these pieces, the grain does not go straight down. The grain goes, let's see, I'm going to fold it so it's easier here. There we go. Okay, so here at the front, the grain will go straight down, but on the back, the grain is going like this. So the grain is going to the bias here of how that will actually fall. And I'm wondering if that will affect how the skirt falls when it's sewn together. I know this is on a lot smaller scale, but I think that really would be a big factor, especially if this is like a miniature pattern of what was once drafted for a real person. Because even like on a, like if you're doing a poodle skirt, you have to put it all together and then hang it, and then you look at your hemline, because so much of the skirt is cut on a bias that the hemline gets kind of wonky, and so you have to even out that hemline in a lot of cases. And so I'm wondering if that could be a factor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the original idea I had of the one that's the semicircle with the ruffle, just because I already had it ready and I had the length adjusted and everything. And then I'm also going to put together the strips. This will not have a big ruffle at the bottom, it'll just go to the floor. I may put a lace edging on it, but I want to see once they're done how it hangs on the doll. I know this will be a factor because once this is gathered to fit the hemline, this will be kind of heavy. So I know this will help it hang well because it'll weight the bottom, but I'm just curious to see what the difference will be. So I'm going to make two. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Also, when I had the original yoke for this doll, as I've mentioned in the part one and then also other videos in drafting patterns for her, she has a thicker figure than a lot of ball jointed dolls. A lot of them are a lot more slender, especially through the hips and the waist. So I did add a little bit to fit this doll in the girth around the waist. So we're going to lift her arms up here. And I took the original yoke and wrapped it around, and it would fit. But I thought once I actually start adding the bulk of other fabrics and the bulk of seam allowances, sometimes that will slightly shrink the size, just because the bulk takes up room. I don't know a different way to explain it, but it doesn't lay absolutely flat like your original pattern piece. And I could get it to fit. There might have been enough room for a snap, but more than likely, if I would have used that original piece, once she has this on, then trying to close it would have probably needed like a hook and eye that can go beyond the edges of the fabric, and I really didn't want that. To me, sometimes it's hard for me to get them so that they fit yet they're snug without a gap between them. I'd rather have an overlap with a snap. So I took that original yoke, and on the fold I added about 1/8 of an inch to this edge where it's folded, and then in here I also added about 1/8 of an inch, which will give me a little, approximately 1/2 an inch more than the original pattern. So with the yoke now extended a little bit, there will be enough overlap to have the seam allowance and be able to put a snap on there, which I think I will like better. So that's my plan for the yoke. So I'm going to go ahead and work on putting this together, and it was hard to get her to actually stand, so let's see if we can get her to stand here still for a moment with just her leg there. So in this video, what we're going to work on is, first I'm going to be gathering the lace ruffle that will go on the bottom of this, and then gathering the top to put on the yoke. Now in the pattern, it only says to cut one yoke and then hem the top edge after you've sewn the skirt on, but I want to hide all the seam allowance of the gathered skirt inside, so I've cut two for, so I have one for a facing and one for the actual front of the yoke. So that will be this one. This pattern will simply be putting all the strips together, then gathering the top edge for the yoke, and go ahead and sew up the back, and then probably add some lace onto the hem. So it's pretty simple. Hopefully they'll go together smoothly, and then we can compare, because I have two dolls with this body type. So we can go ahead and put them side by side and then see how each of these cuts looks once it's all finished. The first petticoat I'm working on is the one with all the strips. So I've sewn all the strips together, and then I serged the seam allowances. I also top stitched the seam allowance down just so that it wouldn't have a tendency to add like kind of more bulk and rumple if those seam allowances were kind of flopping around. So I did go ahead and top stitch them. I've also serged the edge. This will be turned up just enough around the serging so I can add a lace to the edge, and I'm thinking I like this lace, also this top edge of lace, and then I'll trim away the excess so that I'll just have a pretty little scallop on the bottom there of the petticoat hem. So I'm going to use this lace on the hem. Then I went ahead and I've gathered the top and sewn it to the longer edge of the yoke. So if you look at the yoke here, the skirt has been sewn to this longer edge. Now my next step is I've turned this edge that has the seam allowance up, as well as the other side. I've turned that up, and now I'm going to sew up and across the top edge of the yoke and then down again. And with these turned up, then when I flip it so that it's right side out, my little seam allowances will automatically be turned up into the yoke. So it just kind of helps keep that nice and tight. Then all I'll need to do is to hand stitch the yoke into place on the back side. Then once the yoke is finished, the last thing other than the hem is to put right sides together, and then I will sew from the hemline up to probably about here, just because you want a good opening so that you can get the doll, her little bum and hips through the opening of the skirt. So that will be the petticoat, the first one. And so we're almost done with this one. Like I say, it's pretty quick work, just sewing a lot of straight seams together, then a little bit of gathering so I can get the yoke on, and that's a pretty simple task as well. So just those few little steps, and then this first petticoat will be finished. Now with these pieces ready on the second petticoat, I've taken the main part of the skirt and serged down one side all the way around the hem, and then up the other side, which will end up being the center back, is what these two edges will be. Then the next thing I did is I marked with clips the center of this hemline as well as the quarter marks. So let's see if we can fold this here. So it'll be in camera. So this blue one is the center, and then these two red ones mark the quarter distance. I went ahead and serged the edge of my eyelet lace so that it would have a nice finished edge. and I did 2 lines of basting across the top so I can gather it, and then I marked the center and the quarter marks with blue clips. Oh, sorry, the center was blue and the quarter marks with red as well, so that once I have this gathered, I know where to match my spots. So that way I can unfold my skirting here, and I know that this point is going to line up where the blue clips are, and then where the red is, that's how much I have to gather to fit the distance between these 2 clips. And then this clip to the end will go from this clip to the end. So it gives me points to match when I'm gathering this lace. Sometimes people like to clip, but that becomes hard to find when you start gathering the little places where it might be clipped. It's hard to locate them, especially since it's serged on the edge. That thread kind of hides any little notches. So I like this. The other option is to actually put a mark, but because I'm dealing with white that is semi-translucent, you can kind of see my hand under there a little bit. Because that is a little bit translucent, I don't want to put markings on my fabric because then it can show a little bit more than I'd like. So the next step for this petticoat is, of course, to gather the lace edging and then fit it to my skirting and go ahead and sew it on. With this, I am just going to sew right sides together once it's gathered, and then I'll fold the gathered part down and press it. I may add a trim, I'm not sure yet once it's on there, but that's the next part, is to attach the trim to the bottom of the skirt, and then this will have a yoke that will be put together just like on the other petticoat. So that's where I am in this step, and we'll continue on our way. I thought I would just clip the record button on here for a moment. I'm going to go ahead and be putting the lace to the skirt. I have it all gathered here and pinned to the skirt, and I just thought I would put a quick note that when I'm putting something that's all gathered, you know, like a ruffle or whatever, onto another fabric, I usually put the gathered piece down towards the feed dogs of the machine. It was just an old trick my mom taught me a long time ago when I was starting to sew, that way the feed dogs can actually help feed all this gathered fabric more evenly through the machine, just so that you get a better lay of the ruffling that you've worked on. And so that's just what I've always done, is put the gathered side down and let the feed dogs help take that through the machine. And then I can watch the top, make sure there's no pleats in the top, and then I'm constantly just kind of smoothing out those ruffles to prevent pleating on the bottom. But anyway, I just thought I'd put that little note in there as I start to go ahead and sew the ruffle, or the ruffled lace, to the edging of the skirt. And here are the 2 dolls. Jing on the right, the gray skin doll, is a little bit taller than Hua Rong. They have kind of the same body style, same dimensions, but she is a little bit taller. To make sure I was comparing them correctly, they both have the same kind of doll stand, and they both have on some high-heeled boots that have the same heel height. So the 2 dolls can both wear the clothing. The bustier on Jing is in a different video. I can link it below, and this was kind of like a prototype, and the pattern is already on the website. And then Hua Rong has on the combination that we made in the earlier video. So here we go with the long paneled style petticoat that's just the long panels and the lace at the bottom. It does hang very nicely, And I think I definitely can tell a difference in how it just falls pretty much straight down. Whereas the petticoat that is the semicircle has a little bit more puff to it. It does have the weight on the bottom that does help how it falls, but I'll try to back up a little bit, see if you can kind of tell the difference as well. I do see a little bit of a difference. So if you're contemplating making some of these patterns that are a little bit kind of an old-fashioned look, and if the pieces have more of the paneled sized pieces, you can kind of tell how that's going to fall a little bit differently. Now this is just a muslin, just because a lot of the undergarments usually were a muslin, and so I wanted it to kind of have the accurate way the fabric would naturally fall. If you have a fabric that's very silky with a really good drape to it, this is probably going to fall a little bit better than just like a cotton muslin. But I am very happy with how both of these turned out. And since I have the two dolls, I may end up just keeping both of them. I thought one might go in the doll sale, but I don't know. I like them both. I like how they both look. And the little extra bit around the waist that we added to the yoke, it does help it fit really well on top of the other garment. So we'll kind of spin them around to see the back here. They're not on the little spinner this time, so yeah, it's doesn't spin as easily, just trying to turn the the stand. But the back of the gown, or the petticoat, as well as the gown, and then of course the overskirt, does have not a train necessarily, but it is longer in the back on both of these pieces. So we'll spin around the paneled one as well, and then I'll have to move her hair. So we'll move her wig here. Let's see if her arm can hold it out of the way. There we go. So then this does have a little bit more length in the bottom, in the back. There we go. Than the front, and we'll kind of go at an angle here so you can kind of see how it's a little bit more of a lift on the front for easy stepping, and then the train or the little bit of a tail in the back, and that's on both of these. Let's see if we can swirl this around and see if it'll show up as well. This lace, I was very happy with how it looks. So here it's a little bit shorter in the front than the back. Very happy with how both of them turned out. So that's the petticoats that are from the pattern that we looked at. So here we'll spin her around again. And like I said, I'm trying to do this one-handed with the camera in one hand, and there we go. And we'll kind of zoom out. So there we go. There's both the little petticoats that are finished with the combination undergarment. And like I say, the little bustier is in another pattern. It's already on the website. So that you can go ahead and snag if you're interested in making that. And there is a video on putting it together as well. So there we go. There's the next step in our journey to this outfit. And we'll come back when we're ready to do the gown. See you next time. Bye.